Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to a very special video that I've been waiting to make for a long time now, and that is my top favorite games of all times. I've been playing video games ever since 1996-97, I think, and while I've played through a lot of games, there's still a lot that I still haven't played, but regardless of that fact, there are still a lot of games that I hold true and dear as to be my absolute favorite games that I have played thus far. And you're going to get to see 25 of those favorite games. So let's go ahead and get started. There are, however, a couple of rules that I do want to go ahead and kind of brush up on. Number one, obviously being that of one per series. That's an obvious rule. But number two, no HD collections or any game collection series type disc collecting whatever, because while yes, the Kingdom Hearts all-in-one package is a great thing to have, it doesn't necessarily count as a one game per franchise, because technically it's the entire franchise. So with that being said, it's only one game per franchise, and then just the one game itself and not the collection disc itself. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about my top favorite games. So we're going to first start off with 25, and my favorite 25th game would be that of Resident Evil 4. And I have to admit something right here real quickly, and that is I don't play a lot of Resident Evil, mostly because I'm not a big horror fanatic. I'm a scared little bitch. And yeah, I just don't play that many horror survivor games out there. But from what I've played of Resident Evil, being that of Resident Evil 4, 5, I did play the demo of 6, but I haven't really gone any further in terms of playing any other Resident Evil game per se. But Resident Evil 4, I think it is like probably considered to be the stapled Resident Evil game that a lot of people think back to, you know. What with the fact that it changes from like the traditional Resident Evil, where it's like over the head shooter game, and now it's like third person view shooter game, and it's stuck with that ever since. And so far from what I've seen from like the remakes, like the second one that's been out, it seems like they've stuck with the third person view aspects of the Resident Evil 4 game. Now, of course, why is Resident Evil 4 particularly one of my favorites? Well, obviously because it was the first Resident Evil game that I technically had played, but also, too, I really enjoyed the exploration of the world, especially in some of the dark, gritty areas. In my personal opinion, I think at the very beginning parts of the game, that's where horror kind of takes place of it. The sad thing, though, is that at the very end of the game, the horror aspects kind of phase away into more of a bullet rush through to the end of the game itself. But from what the game has by itself is truly amazing in my personal opinion. The bosses in this one are really spot on, really good. And I love just being able to upgrade my briefcase to where I can optimize my holdings of all the weapons that I have, followed by all the items I would attain. And I love the ability to just look around, explore, find jewels and items that you can easily sell for high value, to where you can buy more inventory and stuff. And overall, it's just a really great game to play through. And personally, I have actually completed Resident Evil 4 back whenever it was re-released for the PlayStation 3. And just to get it completed and everything like that, the process itself, yes, was a little bit tedious depending, but overall it was still entertaining in my personal opinion. Number 24 is Uncharted 2, and you know, I've only played up to 3, and I know I'm a little bit behind, especially with Uncharted 4 and then the Uncharted Legacy that came out some time ago. But Uncharted 2 is really good, you know, from where Uncharted 1 started out. You know, Uncharted 2 improved a lot of aspects, mostly because of the reticule when it comes to aiming, when you're shooting an enemy and stuff like that. It helps make the game that much more better. And I haven't really played the multiplayer myself, then again, I'm not a big fan of multiplayer games, but I really love the atmosphere, the exploration, followed by the different puzzles that is within Uncharted 2 itself. And again, if I had to pick which of the three that I have technically played, which one is my personal favorite, it would be, in fact, the second one. The third one, yes, it's done a few improvements, and we get to have a deeper story with Sully, but unfortunately, I felt like the game combat felt a little bit more towards the hand-to-hand combat, which technically did improve a lot, but unfortunately, the combat when it comes to shooting took a back seat because of the improvement of the hand-to-hand combat. And Uncharted 2 is the perfect all-round build when it comes to the gameplay aspects. And again, the world exploration and followed by the different puzzles that you get to interact with are really spot on in my personal opinion. Number 23 goes to Assassin's Creed 3. I mentioned this before, but I've only played up to Assassin's Creed 3, and I know we've got a lot of different Assassin's Creed games, from 4 to Syndicate to Origins to Odyssey for that matter, but of the Assassin's Creed games that I have played, the third one I really like. You know, it took elements that was in Assassin's Creed 2 and then up from the SEO trilogy. It took those same elements and improved them in some form of way, followed by the fact giving it a little bit of new life. What with the fact that it involved American history, and the main assassin being that of Connor is a Native American himself. You get to see the U.S. history that gets involved with. You get to see the events that happen in the game itself. And personally, I really like that. I really do. Whenever it came out and I first found out that it was going to be events in the American Revolution War, I got really excited, and I was very happy, and I was very pleased with what I got to play out of it. And it was truly fun. It was truly entertaining in my personal opinion. And really, the best part about Assassin's Creed 3 was mostly just involving the homestead area, where you get to build it up, you get to help individual people, and you get to not only create certain items, but also create your own stock in order to sell it back and forth. Number 22 goes to God of War, and no, it's not going to be for the PS4 God of War, but rather the original PS2 God of War game, the very first God of War we've ever gotten. And most people say, well, what's wrong with the newest God of War game? And the actual answer is that there's nothing wrong with it because I hadn't really played it yet. But I wouldn't doubt that it's good. It's just, I like the very first one personally myself. I love the area that you get to explore, being that of Pandora's tomb itself. The way the puzzles are, the way that it kind of overlaps itself. I really do like it because it kind of gives you that ideal assumption of how the puzzle is and how the entire area itself is just a giant puzzle. You know, while in the later series, of course, you get to venture up, like, say, for example, Mount Olympus in the third one. In some areas, you get to crawl into the depths of Hades. And in some areas, it's just overall build-up when it comes down to it. And God of War has a really great way of telling the story, followed by including Greek mythology in every turn it goes. And I love the first one, personally, myself, just because of everything that's in the first one. You know, the bosses are truly epic and amazing. And again, later parts in the game, in the series itself, while yes, may have better improved gameplay to some degree, probably have better weapons, but the first one, in my personal opinion, is the best God of War game that we got. And, you know, whenever I was playing this game to get the footage for it, I've said in the past that God of War is a perfect anger management game. And it's no stretch of that anymore. It is still the same way, you know, when you tear off the head of a Gorgon, or much less take the eye of a Cyclops, or even rip a Hydra head into pieces, you know, just to be able to do all that, it does kind of relieve you in some form of way. You know, I wouldn't recommend doing it in real life, of course not, no, but God of War is that kind of stress relieving that it brings onto the table. And so, if you're a fan of God of War, and you've never played the first one, definitely give it a shot, it's really good. So number 21 goes to Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes, which is technically Sengoku Basara 3, in Japan of course. We didn't really get that many Sengoku Basara games. We've only gotten like Devil King, which was for the PlayStation 2, and then of course Samurai Heroes 3, which came out for the PlayStation 3. Whenever I played Dynasty Warrior-like game, Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes was actually the first Dynasty Warrior game that I technically had tried out and played. And I really enjoyed it. To a point to where I decided to pull my brother into it, and we played through Sengoku Basara a lot actually, to a point to where we actually completed the game, and it was truly entertaining, it was fun. We got to unlock different characters. Delmar's favorite one is obviously Tadakasu, being that of a giant frippin' tank. But it's really fun, really entertaining, and really when it comes down to Dynasty Warriors like games, I always defer back to Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes because of how well it does things, how well it executes stuff, and how fun and entertaining the characters are. Not to say that any other one is bad, it's just when it comes down to it, Sengoku Basara Samurai Hero is really the best one. And I really wish they would have brought all the other ones that came out after that into America, but they never did. So as far as I know, the fourth one of Sengoku Basara never got an actual American release, which is a shame because I would have enjoyed it personally myself. Number 20 would have to go to Metal Gear Solid 4. And when it comes down to it, I have played the first three before the fourth one, and whenever I finally got into the fourth one, I started to see how the advancements had been from where it was in the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2, and then to see it all evolutionize. I really liked the gameplay aspects. I love being able to sneak around. I love the shooting that it has in it. The story that gets put into it is a little bit hard to kind of grasp at times, mostly because of like, say for example, if you're a fan of like looking into like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, Kojima knows how to stretch that to beyond the imagination. He knows how to stretch it that far. He's an insane man, but that's how we get such a creative story from the Metal Gear Solid series, is because of his genius of how the story progresses and stuff. And 4 kind of like goes into this reflection of the past 3 games, you know. And keep in mind, Metal Gear Solid is a big series, followed by Metal Gear itself. But I love the fourth one personally myself, and really, in all honesty, even though I have completed this thing once, technically, and tried to get the Big Boss emblem a total of 3 different times, I would definitely go back again, if not being afraid of risking my PlayStation 3 to completely shut down. For those that don't know, I actually made a video in regards to what I classify the cursed game, and Metal Gear Solid 4 is that cursed game. And I've yet to have tried completing Metal Gear Solid 4 again, but if I ever have a chance, I'm definitely wanting to go back into it and try to go for the Big Boss emblem someday. But for the time being right now, I still love the fourth one personally. It's one of my favorites of the series. Number 19 is The World Ends With You, and I've only played the DS version, so if you're going to ask me what my thoughts are on the Switch version, I do plan on getting it sometime later on, but I hadn't really had a chance to get it yet. But what do I think of The World Ends With You? Out of any handheld game that I have technically played in the past, The World Ends With You is my personal favorite, you know. I love the story that it has, I love the gameplay aspects, but mostly looking at it towards like a completion standpoint when it comes to a handheld game itself, you know. Most handhelds, I can only play with it for so long up until the end of the story, but The World Ends With You has such an interesting gameplay. What with the top part being that of your partner's side, and then the bottom part is your main character, Neku, and you use the bottom screen with the stylus to select the pins in order to activate different abilities and stuff, and then you fight some of the enemies on the top part with your partner with the directional buttons. And really, in all honesty, it made such a interesting and creative gameplay aspects, and being able to collect the different pins, the art style that it has, you know. It's weird because whenever I first picked up The World Ends With You, I thought this was like some kind of Kingdom Hearts-esque game or something like that. And I was like, you know what, it looks Kingdom Hearts, so let's pick it up anyway. And it wasn't really Kingdom Hearts, but it was still really good in my personal opinion. I really enjoyed it. And then to see The World Ends With You actually appear in Dream Drop Distance, that was quite a shock, you know. And I really want to play the Switch version just to see what it's like, and then kind of see which one is better, the DS or the Switch. Once that happens, I will give you an update on that particular video. But until then, The World Ends With You DS version is my personal favorite. Number 18 is Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. So Oddworld Stranger's Wrath originally came out for the original Xbox system. And I've actually played it on the original Xbox. Whenever I first saw Stranger's Wrath in a show called Cheat years ago, before that channel got completely destroyed by cop shows and stuff like that, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath appeared on Cheat, basically showing like cheat codes and stuff like that. But I got interested in the gameplay. I really liked it. I was very interested with it. And I love the ideal aspects that it had, where you get to hunt down the different bounties, and basically you can either leave them alive for extra bounty, or you can just flat out kill them because of how frustrating they can be and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed it. I really have fun with it. It's truly entertaining. It's hilarious. And really, I love how Stranger's Wrath is. And then, of course, when it came out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 later on, I decided to get it for the PlayStation 3, obviously. And I think, in my personal opinion, I think I like it better on the PlayStation system rather than I actually do on the Xbox system itself. Not to say there's any difference in terms of performance, because I really hadn't noticed it. But in terms of controls, it feels better on the PlayStation 3, personally myself. And I wish it would have came out for the PlayStation 4, but we never got a re-release of it. Maybe sometime soon we will. Who's to say, really? But I really love Stranger's Wrath for the PlayStation 3. It's really one of my personal favorites. And really, sadly, the only Oddworld game that I actually enjoyed, because all the other ones, it's a little different, if you've noticed. Some of them are extremely different compared to Stranger's Wrath. Stranger's Wrath is its own unique game compared to the other games. Not to say that the others are bad, it just depends on what your particular favorite is when it comes to gameplay, and Stranger's Wrath was really good in my personal opinion. I'm going to have a couple people who are going to be very pleased whenever I talk about this one. It has to be Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And the reason is simply because while on the one hand I haven't really played that many Legend of Zelda games, I've only played two other ones aside from this, being that of Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask. But Breath of the Wild is really a good one. It's really an amazing and a beautiful game to play through. The music is really good, it's very relaxing, it's calming, and it allows you to stay with the world a little bit longer, to get a little bit more exploration in. And there's a lot of different shrines to interact with, to get different puzzles and stuff. And it's interesting because while it only gives you 4 different tools to use in these shrines, these 4 different tools can be used in any assortments of ways. And I think it's funny because while there are some temples that are like straight and narrow, straight to the point, there are some temples where it's like, there's another way you could have done that. There's another way you could have done this and stuff like that. And it's interesting because it's like, the first time I've ever realized that there was different ways you can do it. You had this gyroscope one where you have the ball and you're supposed to get it out of it in order to get to the platform to activate the door. In my case, as I was getting frustrated with it, I had the ball hit the corner and it landed right into the pocket without even me interacting with the puzzle. But there are other people who have done it a little bit further, and that is to turn it upside down and have it at an angle to where when the ball dropped, it would just roll right towards the edge and get into the pocket. So it's like, it's interesting of how the number of ways you can interact with the shrines themselves. The story in Breath of the Wild is really good too as well, especially whenever you get to interact with the 4 different guardians of each different temple beast. It's just, the puzzles themselves are great, the story is great, the characters are awesome, and really just to explore this world, really. I love it. I love every moment of it. It's the one game, in my personal opinion, where I wish you could do half the stuff that Breath of the Wild have, because everywhere you see in the world, you think to yourself, can I get to that point? Can I get there? The answer is, yes, you can, and eventually you will overcome it. In my personal opinion, every mountain that I have climbed is more climactic than any boss fight that I've ever fought in that game, because knowing that I've achieved it, that height of getting to that peak, was enough for me to know that I've finally gotten to that height, to where it seemed like from the very beginning you think to yourself there was no way you can get to that height, and eventually as you grow and attain more spirit orbs to increase either your health or stamina, eventually you will get to the point to where you can actually start climbing higher obstacles. You know, you'd be more daring to climb higher places that you figured you couldn't reach. So it was really amazing to just be able to play Breath of the Wild, to experience it, and to enjoy everything that it gives out to. So definitely enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to the second one when it finally does get released. Number 16 goes to No More Heroes, but specifically Heroes Paradise for the PlayStation 3. For those that are probably asking what's the difference between the two, and really none that I've noticed, but then again, I've never really played the Wii version. The only thing that I'm aware of is that there might be 1 or 2 extra stuff that they've added into the PS3 version, followed by the fact that the Wii motion controls is the controls for the Wii version, obviously, but the PlayStation 3 control, the only motion controls you really have to worry about is just charging the beam katana with the PlayStation 3. You know, obviously shaking it, of course. Aside from that, No More Heroes, is it really that good? Yes, it is. And personally, in my personal opinion, I love just being able to fight these individual assassins, these individual bosses that you get to fight in the game itself. They're all individually different. They all fight differently in their own way. And as you go further into the game, to get better, either better equipment or higher stats, stuff like that, it's just that much more funner to play. And on the one hand, yes, it is kind of daunting to go through jobs in order to attain money just to get to the next assassin target, but the reality is that you get to enjoy the assassination part a little bit more while you're waiting for the next target to be available, because while yes, you do have to do jobs in order to get money to where you can put that money to submit to where you can go for the next boss, it gives that space to where you can have preparation and time to where once you finally encounter the boss, you get to finally go through the struggle of fighting it. You get to absorb yourself into the battle itself, and really, in all honesty, while the pacing yet can be a little bit slow at times, once you get into the actual combat parts of it, it's truly entertaining. And I think No More Heroes deserves a little bit more love, and I'm looking forward to the third one. I really wish that I could play the second one without Wii motion controls, followed by that ridiculous high price. But I would love to play Desperate Struggle someday soon. So who's to say when I'll get to play it, but hopefully it'll be sometime before the third one comes out, which hopefully the third one will come out maybe this year. Who's to say? I hadn't really heard, but only time will tell. Number 15 goes to Pokemon Colosseum for the GameCube. So here's the thing. I've played Pokemon since Pokemon Red. Okay, that was years ago, alright? And I love Pokemon Red. I have played some Pokemon games here and there and stuff like that. I've definitely played through Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And then, of course, Diamond and Platinum. But that was like the farthest that I played when it comes to those single installments of Pokemon. Whereas like the side stuff, like for example Pokemon Stadium, in some cases Pokemon Channel was okay. Pokemon Snap, that was really good. But Pokemon Colosseum when it comes down to it, you're familiar with the story of how Pokemon goes in the main installments, where, you know, you go after these gym leaders, you get the badge in order to fight against the Elite Four. In Pokemon Colosseum, though, that changes entirely, where the main story is that you basically have the power to save Pokemon that are embedded by Shadow. And basically you can capture these Shadow Pokemons in order to train them, in order to purify them of the darkness that inhabits them. And it's truly different. It's truly a different experience than any other Pokemon game that we have gotten thus far. And really, to have this story was truly an amazing event, personally, myself. There are a lot of stuff that's in Pokemon that carries into this game. A lot of different combats, as well as a battle tower, where you basically scale up this volcano, and as you're fighting these different powerful trainers, you are able to get more experience and everything like that. And if you want another good one, Pokemon XD is really good as well. But Pokemon Colosseum is just that perfection of how Pokemon should have went. You know, a new type of Pokemon game that I was wanting. And I was actually hoping that Sword and Shield would be different. Instead, we kind of have this samey-ish Pokemon game that we're familiar with, but with a different element into it, being that of open world, of course. Who's to say what Pokemon Shield or Sword is going to be like, because I haven't really played it yet, but I still hold Pokemon Colosseum as like a better example of what a Pokemon game could be like, and what people might actually potentially want out of a Pokemon game, instead of the normal that we're used to seeing these days. The Witcher 3. So, here's the thing. I've never played The Witcher, much less The Witcher 2. But The Witcher 3, whatever they did with The Witcher 3, they did it perfect. They knew what they wanted out of The Witcher 3. They knew what they were building up to, and they did it flawlessly, in my personal opinion. Does it have a few glitches here and there? It does. I won't lie. It does have one or two glitches at times. But because of how much is in the game, how much it actually has, it is insane. The main game itself is just so packed. Your mind would be blown as to how well they've done this. In terms of how the story is, in terms of the combat, in terms of being able to upgrade your items and weapons, to make them, to add on different elements to Garrett himself. Just all of this just builds up more and more. And you know what's funny? Because The Witcher 3 is an open concept, it's an open world game. And so you would think to yourself, oh, an open world game, that means it's going to be the same thing where you get to explore the land itself, you know, you get to fight monsters, collect items and stuff, you get to interact with different hunts and stuff like that. But The Witcher 3 decides to take that element a little bit better, because technically Garrett, being that of a Witcher, is kind of like a bounty hunter, or a mercenary, if you will. He is basically a hired sword to either help others or to basically kill other things in order to get money and stuff. And what I love about this is that they decided to go a little bit further with these individual side quests. You know, you'll take on a quest, you know, you'll go see the person tells you what happens and stuff like that. And, you know, on the one hand, you have the option to where you can choose how much of a bounty you want, either a bigger bounty or a smaller bounty, you know? And that's kind of the crazy thing, you know, you get to adjust the bounty however way you want to. So say, for example, if you feel like you need more cash, you can ask for more. Sometimes you can't ask for a really high amount. You just gotta kind of negotiate in that middle ground to where they feel like they can pay for it. Or if you feel like, you know what, I'm just in it for the experience, you can easily do it for free if you want to. And the character interactions are so interesting to see their reactions, because some of them are like, really? You do this for free? Wow. I thought Witchers were heartless. And it's interesting because they add in an extra detail when it comes to the game. They could have easily said, okay, let's go and stuff like that. because of how big it is. No, they went even further when it comes to the detail of that. And then of course, beyond the side quests, they even add in an expanding part of the side quest, you know, because again, the main character will tell you what happened, but as you're going into the quest itself, you get a bigger explanation into the story. And so to see the individual side quests, the way they've expanded each side quest into their own little story, it makes it truly unique. And really, there isn't a game like The Witcher 3, you know. The Witcher 3 is truly its own unique game. And a lot of people are hyped up for Cyberpunk 2077. And I'm sure it's probably going to have the same thing that The Witcher 3 has, that I just love The Witcher 3 for. And maybe so, maybe it will be that good. But for the time being, The Witcher 3, in my personal opinion, is a solid game and highly recommended, in my personal opinion. I cannot believe I waited as long as I did to finally play this. And whenever I finally did, I'm just glad I did. Number 13 goes to Ratchet Deadlock. Now, there's been a lot of Ratchet & Clank games, you know. It spawned back from the PlayStation 2 and it's made its way all the way up to the PlayStation 4 with the Ratchet & Clank remake that it had. And out of all the Ratchet & Clank games, there's only one Ratchet & Clank game that I love the most, and that is Ratchet Deadlock. And let's put it this way, the best parts of Ratchet & Clank is all in Ratchet Deadlock. You know, the combat's great in this one. All the best weapons, any weapon that you're particularly a favorite of, this game has it. And then of course the fact that it is of course a battle tournament on its own. And then of course the humor in Deadlock is at its peak in this one. In my personal opinion, Deadlock was considered to be the best humor-related Ratchet & Clank game we've gotten. I mean, what else can you say?
If you stray into any restricted area, the collar will administer an extremely painful shock. Observe.
I hate this job.
It just truly is an amazing game on its own, and out of any game, this one's a really good couch co-op game in my personal opinion. It's really fun and really entertaining because you be able to unlock different costumes by doing the skill points and stuff like that, and it builds up to where you can purchase these different characters. And when you beat the game, you have the option to where you can actually purchase the Jak costume in Ratchet Deadlock, and that's interesting. That's an interesting element. Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter has always crossed paths in some small form of way, but Ratchet Deadlock, aside from all the small details, is a really fun and entertaining game. It's truly hilarious, best weapons in it, and in my personal opinion, the best Ratchet & Clank game. Number 12 goes to the very first Jak and Daxter game that came out back on the PlayStation 2. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be surprised whenever I say that, you know, because there's been Jak 2 and 3 along with Jak X. So what makes Jak and Daxter, the very first one, so particularly good that it outsurpassed the other games? And, well, let's put it this way. On the one hand, it's mostly because the vast world that is in Jak and Daxter is truly a fun game to play through. All of the different quests that you get to take on are truly entertaining in their own right. It is funny, maybe not as funny as like the later Jak games are, but Jak and Daxter is so massively uniquely different. And keep in mind, this was obviously right after they created Crash Bandicoot, so they had an ideal formula of what they were going to go with Jak and Daxter. But of course, Jak 2 changed all that completely, and we've seen this evolution scale in terms of different Jak and Daxter that we got to experience. Again, Jak 2, 3, Jak X, and so on and so forth, they're really good in their own right, but Jak and Daxter is a special, unique game on its own, and I love it for it. Number 11 goes to Deus' Human Revolution. So, I have to say something right now. Human Revolution, when it first came out, I was interested in what it was, what it looked like, and stuff like that, but I didn't really pick it up until like a year later. And whenever I played through it, I really enjoyed what it did in terms of the game itself, you know. The gameplay, the first-person shooter aspect is really good, but the stealth in this is really top-notch. Probably equal to that of like Metal Gear Solid top-notch when it comes to stealth. But there's also enhancements that's in the game. You know, it incorporates the make your own story type element where you can either do something extra, you can help an individual, you can do extra side quests, you can do all this extra interacting stuff. You can always get a different gameplay every single time. And whenever you encounter an individual, when it comes to a dialogue options and stuff, you're always going to have a different outcome every time. Either by you probably have purchased some kind of enhancement that allows you to read into the character's dialogue in order to choose which one would be the best way to talk to them. And as you even get further, if you still have that attachment, some of them will actually pick up that you actually have that installment and you're just playing with their emotions. So it's always going to be a different gameplay every time. It's going to be different all the time. And that's the best part about it, is that there's all these different enhancements that you can add on to Jensen, but you can't equip all of them, you know? There's so many different ones, you're always going to have a different experience every time, either by enhancing either your main character's body by either the armor or the battery life, followed by the speed, or being able to cloak behind backgrounds to where the enemies can't see you, or improve in terms of your case to where you can hold more items. Just all sorts of different abilities. And really, when you think about it, all these different enhancements, when you read the options and read what they are all uniquely different, and they all add in a realm of strategy to devise whether or not you want to use them. You know, you may want super hearing, you may want to have the cloak ability, you may want to be able to have extended battery life. You know, depending on your gameplay options, depends on how in-depth Human Revolution can be. And personally, I love the story that is in Human Revolution. You know, you see Adam from where he was originally human, and he gets to be augmented at the very beginning of the game. And so not only are you learning how these augmentations work as a character, you're learning it as an individual yourself. You get to see how the world is, and to see this massive world of where there's actually an individual group that basically is trying to keep technology from advancing because they believe that it's some kind of sin or some kind of taboo type thing to enhance human abilities. Is an interesting kind of subject to kind of bring up on. Like, have we really evolved into technology to where we're kind of committing a form of a taboo ourselves? And it's an interesting story, really. And I think it's probably better than Mankind Divided. Mankind Divided is okay on its own, and it has some unique features, but Human Revolution, in my opinion, was really good in all fields that it has, and truly amazing. So guys, this is part 1 of my top 25 games of all times. So if you want to, you are more than welcome to check out part 1 when it becomes available. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.